with international and national speakers and political leaders. Hosted by Family First New Zealand, the forum brings together a national network of family-focused organisations, scholars, lobby groups, church leaders and community groups who are part of a growing movement to bring New Zealand to a point where families are strengthened, marriage is honoured, life is protected and religious freedom is defended. This year's conference will again be held at the Dewdrop Event Centre in Manukau City, not too far from the Auckland Airport, on Thursday 28th of August and Friday 29th of August. Yes, because of demand, we're starting the conference earlier with 3 important sessions and a time of networking on the Thursday evening, and then a full-day program all day Friday. This year's theme is Courage at a Cultural Tipping Point. The culture is slowly but surely waking up to the harmful effects of the radical left-wing agenda and the destruction of family values that we all hold dear. Some countries have even figured out how to define a woman. And at this year's conference, once again, we have an amazing lineup of brave speakers from the US, Canada, Australia and New Zealand. Dr. Miriam Grossman last spoke at our forum in 2012. You may also recognise her from the recent Daily Wire documentary, What is a Woman? But more recently, she's released an important book on the transgender agenda. I'll be doing a live interview with Dr. Grossman from New York, where she is based. Jeff Johnson is an issues analyst for Focus on the Family in the United States. We're also very excited to have Dawn Hawkins discussing the issue of pornography and sexual exploitation. From Canada, we have Amanda Ackman bringing us a warning about the slippery slope of euthanasia. From Australia, we have Kirralie Smith, a wife, a mother, and an activist for biology and truth, but who is paying the price for speaking up. And for the first time in New Zealand, you will get to hear their side of the story. Israel and Maria Folau. Now we're hoping that they'll be able to attend in person. They're keen to be here, but it does depend on Israel's rugby schedule in Japan. But either way, we'll get to hear from them personally and not via the hostile mainstream media. And finally, we're hosting and recording a special episode of Straight Talk before a live audience at the conference. It'll be a lively discussion and you can be part of that live audience. I want to invite you to this year's Forum on the Family. It starts Thursday night, 28th, 6 p.m. to 9:30 p.m. and then all day Friday, 29th from 8:45 a.m. through to 4:30 p.m. It's the highlight of the year and you don't want to miss it. Arrange to be there. Book your flights today. Gather your friends. If you're concerned for our culture, our country and our families, you may be saying, what can I do? Well, step 1, attend the Forum on the Family. Have your spine stiffened by some fabulous speakers who will encourage, equip and inspire you. Now, the last couple of years have been sellouts, so don't delay. Go to our website, forumonthefamily.nz, for all the information you need. Register today. Don't miss this important family conference. Go to forumonthefamily.nz. Register today.
Well, good morning. And it is a good morning, even though here in Auckland, where I am at the moment, it is bucketing down with rain once again. I'm actually feeling a little bit smug, I must admit, because I went out yesterday late afternoon, early evening to quickly mow our lawns. If it's like probably most places in New Zealand, it's been so wet, so rainy that it's been difficult to do any maintenance. But there was a little bit of a window yesterday, and I thought, right, we're going to get it done. So anyway, I'm feeling quite pleased about that. But it is pouring down, as we know, and I can see in the comments, which I'll share in a moment, it's clearly similar around New Zealand. But look, good morning and welcome to Solid Ground, where we sit down and we talk about the issues of the day, things that have caught my eye, and we just talked about them from a good, I'd say, conservative perspective. Good philosophy, good politics. Well, I'm biased on that one. Good ethics, and just a good discussion. Hence we call it Solid Ground. You'll be watching this, well, if you're watching this, it'll be across an array of platforms from LinkedIn to X, Facebook, YouTube, of course, one of the most popular channels we find. Know that if you are on Family First Facebook or its YouTube channel, your comments come live to me here in the studio, which enables me to do things like this. So good morning to Michael, who was the winner this morning. He was the first to comment. We've got lovely Jackie there down in Ratihi. Again, sounds like it's very rainy there. I imagine it's right across the country. Harrison, it's always lovely to have you along. And look, you are not forgotten. Sandra, good morning to you. Dee Dee is saying, good morning. Well, here's a little curio for you. So obviously I'm called Simon. I'm actually named after Simon of Cyrene. And I'm just going to leave that there for now to see who our first quick biblical scholar is, to work out who is Simon of Cyrene. There's your little curio for everyone this morning. Koshar, if I've said that right, and apologies if I haven't, is asking, is there a cost to live stream? Look, the long and short is it's only minimal. So we pay a little bit of money to stream across multiple platforms. In other words, to actually sit down here and talk to you guys doesn't cost anything at one level. But because I have some software which enables to do one record, but it then goes off to YouTube and to Facebook and LinkedIn and X, that we pay a little bit for. And then, of course, equipment. Obviously, to set up, you need a laptop, you need a camera, you need a microphone like this one. So there's if you will, setup costs. But to actually do the live stream, it's free. Like YouTube doesn't charge us, Facebook doesn't charge us, and so forth. So there you go. I hope that answers it. What have we got here? Morning from... there's so many comments and I'm losing track. Good morning to Rosie down there in Taupo. No, I can imagine, actually. I travelled, was it last week or the week before? We literally zipped through Taupo and across the desert road, and it just bucketed the whole way. And look, we've got Anna Marie there in Whanganui. Lovely to have you. Darren. Oh, God. I should recognise people's faces from now. Lovely to have you along. Trinity, good morning. Got Lynette there as well. Good morning to you. And now the answers. The answers are coming through about who Simon of Cyrene was. I think we've got Simply Green and good morning. The man who was forced to carry the cross. That's exactly right. DD is saying the same thing. And DD was saying he was African. So on that, I cannot relate. I am probably a whole mixture of things, but Irish amongst others. In fact, that was my was actually writing a Substack 2 days ago around my trip to Ireland, and particularly visiting where my grandfather had fought. He was part of the IRA, of all things. Back in the 1920s, I better make a quick distinction before people think my grandfather, A, was exceptionally young and B, was involved with the terrorist activities in the 70s and 80s. But then I got distracted by another topic which I'm actually going to talk about this morning. And good morning to Elizabeth. Look, lovely to have you along. So everyone, again, I'm delighted. I always look forward to these mornings, which is marvellous. And I've actually had the good fortune over the time now, I think we're up to about the 64th or 63rd episode. I've actually bumped into people all around the country who watch Solid Ground, or they follow other family first programs, or those who follow me on RCR, Reality Check Radio. It's always lovely to meet people in person. Hey, look, I thought I'd just jump back very, very quickly to something that I was talking about on Tuesday, which was the Supreme Court there in the United States and its array of decisions. So, as you know, they've said, they've responded to a number of states and complaints that they've had, if that's what a court does, takes on complaints, I suppose. Everything from defunding Planned Parenthood to actually allowing Texas to block pornography for those under 18 and so on. But I just thought I would delve into this one a little bit. I think I might have touched on it very briefly, and I've forgotten what state it is. It doesn't really matter. But long and short, it's sort of a win for religious freedom, but it also illustrates the tension between rights. So as I understand this case, again in the United States, children were being forced, effectively, to attend indoctrination around gender identity in particular. And the kicker was that the parents were not being told. Parents were not allowed to actually see what the material is, so the books, the videos, they weren't to know who was coming into the schools. And I think that's probably what tipped the court case. And I say that not as a lawyer, but just as an observer, because schools will teach an array of topics, of course, and particularly when you get into the RSE space or relationship and sexuality education, there's always going to be a range of views, perspectives, if you will, that are going to be introduced. And so clearly the parents involved in this case, who took it to the Supreme Court, didn't want their children to be getting any indoctrination, any education around LGBTIQ+, certainly not around gender identity. They didn't want their children going into classrooms and being told that little Johnny could be a dolphin or that Martha could be a teddy bear, which is, of course, the absurdity of gender identity if you think about it. It's not just simply that you could be a girl becoming a boy or a boy becoming a girl. It becomes far more complicated than that. We already have examples right here in New Zealand classrooms where they put cats' litter boxes in the corner because one of the students believes they're a cat. Just let that sink in for a moment, because it is, of course, a good illustration of what is the madness of gender identity. Once you divorce reality from what we can empirically observe and know, and just leave it into belief, you've basically gone a very long way, a long way away from rationality and certainly away from reality. In many ways, you're actually going back to a pre-Enlightenment world where just what you think and believe is real, and that's not the case. So anyway, just thought I'd quickly share that. But with the court case, it seemed to me, and why it's so vitally important, is the Supreme Court there in the United States said that actually a parent's ability to teach and instruct their child in their religious tradition is fundamentally important. And yes, it clashes up against the right to education. It clashes even probably against the right of free speech. In other words, people are able to talk and share about different things, even mad ideas like gender identity. But the court was saying, well, yes, there is the ability to educate and talk about an array of topics, but parents have a fundamental right to actually raise their child as they want to. And they have a fundamental right to enable children to be instructed in their religious traditions and religious beliefs. And if you don't believe in gender identity, if your religious belief, and by the way, most world religions are this, don't believe in a lot of particularly the transgender and so forth, then you're allowed to know, first and foremost, what's happening in the school. But you're also allowed to withdraw your child from it. So anyway, I just thought that was a fascinating situation and a fascinating ruling by the Supreme Court. And I have to say, I think it's the right one. And particularly, on a number of levels, as we have here at Family First, we're not particularly keen on overly explicit or any explicit, actually, education into schools. So much stuff that is still happening here in New Zealand is not age appropriate. But I think it's fundamentally important, that's why I lent into this one, that actually parents are the primary teachers, that's probably a bad pun, but they are the primary teachers of their children. And they should know what's being taught. And to be fair, here in New Zealand, there is transparency, although you have to ask. It's one of the key things, and I certainly encourage parents watching this today. Make sure you are knowing what's being taught in your classrooms or your children's classrooms, not just around relationships and sexuality education. Find out what else they're teaching in the English curriculum and social studies and so forth, because we have amazing teachers, but we have other ones who are completely ideological and will take all and every chance to indoctrinate your child. And it's not just on LGBTQI plus issues, it can be political issues here in New Zealand, views on the treaty, views on politics, you name it. So just, again, be aware. Certainly sit down, as I do with my foster daughter, and ask questions. Oh, what are they teaching you today? And then if you've got any concerns, go and engage the school. So anyway, very long, typical me. So Simply Green, I'm just looking here, I'm actually clicking through. Sorry, it's gone so small I can barely read it. Oh, I see, they put them in a position around the birthright. Yeah, so is it another case going through at the moment? I haven't followed that. The birthright stuff, though, in the United States, for those who are wondering, I think, and I'm maybe phrasing this wrong, but it's people who've come into the country illegally, but if the child is born in the United States, they then are allowed, there's a pathway to become a citizen, and I believe the Trump administration is trying to get rid of all of that. I think their position is basically if you come into the country illegally, it doesn't matter when you have your children, how many, whether it was in the States or not, that they're not going to have a pathway to citizenship. So DD is saying, you can recuse children. So here in New Zealand, so of course that was jumping back to that Supreme Court case. That's an American situation. The Supreme Court is now saying parents are allowed to take or recuse their children from these classes. They're certainly allowed to know what's being taught, because again, there's a fundamental right, and a fundamental right for parents to be able to know and to guide their children in their own religious belief. But certainly here in New Zealand, you can pull your kid out of classes, which is good. This one I can't comment on Simply Green, and that I'm not 100% sure the angle. Pretty good question. Feel free to elucidate further, but it's one I'm not 100% sure. Anna Marie, I think, nails it too. It's a classroom full of distractions. That's not particularly helpful. And I like this from Rosie, and my wife talks about this as well. It's allowing kids just to be kids. It's a precious time in life, and it goes by very, very quickly, as we've said to the kids here in our home. I mean, they're all adults now, bar our foster child. But, it goes very, very fast, and we do certainly see those enormous pressures now in society, driven ideologically in some circumstances, to make children into adults far too quickly, certainly to sexualize them. In fact, we've done some podcasts around this on Family Matters where we're talking about the exploitation and the sexploitation. Is that even the right? Sexualization, there we go. Exploitation and sexualization of children. It's a precious time in life, and they should be allowed just to be kids, to be innocent and fun. And that's one of the challenges around things like social media. So anyway, there we go. I'm just skimming. Oh, I see. So Simply Green is following up around young Earth creationism. So it was clearly being taught. I assume then that this was being taught alongside evolution. And now that I understand that better, and thank you, is saying, well, if that's being removed, why can't other elements of the curriculum? Yeah, well, I think certainly in the New Zealand case, there are actually particular decisions of what is and is not in the curriculum. As I say, with the RSE teaching here, and I'm going to segue to something actually quite important, believe it or not, or something that maybe not so much important is quite useful. Here in New Zealand, certainly when kids are being taught RSE, there's always going to be elements around sexuality in particular, and there will be even mention around gender identity. And look, I have to say I'm relatively okay with that when it's age appropriate, because it's something that is in society, something, it is what it is, and therefore it can be engaged. But that's a far cry from a lot of what we're seeing now, both in New Zealand and certainly what was coming out of that US court case, that it's not age appropriate, that what's being taught has been hidden from parents, and it's an aggressive, if you will, propagandizing agenda, which, when it comes again to children, is majorly problematic, particularly young girls, which is why I mentioned that UN report on Tuesday, where the UN Special Rapporteur was saying, look, this has to stop, because particularly it affects young girls. And Peter Rouse, who's just commented, and I'd recommend this too, I think if doing young kids again, would do homeschool. I think that's a really, really good thing, actually. Homeschool your children, because a lot of what they're getting now is indoctrination. On the positive front, and I said it's sort of a segue, I've only just released this podcast. It's with Judith Cairns. She leads something called Love for Life. It's based out of Northern Ireland, and it's around their relationships and sexuality education. And all I can say is it's amazing. They touch on all sorts of topics through they literally do from primary school. In fact, I think they do from preschool all the way up to the end of secondary school. And the program's just amazing. It's age appropriate, but it's values based. So instead of going in with a political agenda, which is a lot of what RSE has become here in New Zealand, they actually go in with a values base around dignity in particular, and your importance. And it's just actually really amazing. She shares, this is going to sound strange, but it all starts with teddy bears. Little kids and their teddy bears, and just how they value them and embrace them. And so look, I just encourage you to jump onto Family First's Facebook page, its YouTube channel, certainly its web page, and find the podcast, because I think what Judith is doing and her team for Love for Life, again in Northern Ireland, is actually quite an inspiration for us here in New Zealand. It would be good if we did embrace that. It's one of my little frustrations amongst many. New Zealand always seems to think it has to reinvent the wheel. We don't. We what is the right phrase here? Not trying to be diplomatic, just trying to think of the right words. We spend enormous amounts of time going around in circles trying to reinvent curriculum for schools, or working out how to design an RSE program, when actually people are doing some amazing stuff already and are more than prepared to share them. And Anna Marie is giving an endorsement. She's already watched the podcast. That is great. There is the one viewer I saw. No, I'm kidding. We're actually doing quite well with this one. Long and short, great that you've watched it. It is really something we need in New Zealand. Harrison's noted saying he still has a teddy bear called Bruno. I used to have a teddy bear. I just called it unoriginally Teddy. Which, in some ways is perfectly fine. I think probably most do. But yes, I wasn't as original as your good self. And Dee Dee is saying that why New Zealand doesn't take lessons from overseas is because we use number 8 wire. And you know what? I'm actually going to lean into that, because I gave a talk overseas about this. Look, I love this country, and I've always got to say that. But I've found that every country has a number 8 wire mentality in one shape or another. So it's not to knock our amazing country and our inventors, but every country has its number 8 wire mentality. They might not call it that, but I think at times New Zealand, again, I love this country, but I think we're exceptional and very different to the rest of the world, and we're not. We have many, many similarities. Of course, there's points of difference. We're not linked to our environment and our political system and so forth. But yes, some of the things which I think New Zealanders believe make us completely different are not. But that's just me. That's just me. Right. So the other thing, as I say, getting distracted, and actually a swig of coffee, because it's time for me to keep my voice. I don't know if you saw, I'm just going to put this up briefly when I can find it. This is my Substack from yesterday, and I'm actually going to talk about it because I was deplatformed, cancelled from speaking at a university. And I thought I would just use the last few minutes of today's show to talk about that a little bit. You can always, of course, go to substack.com and find the Substack, and just look up my name or look up what's called On Point. That's what I call it. So as I say, I was deplatformed from a New Zealand university because the topic that I was going to discuss, the topic I was asked actually to discuss, which is around Israel and Gaza, was deemed to be too sensitive, both as a topic and in timing. So I got cancelled, which in itself is quite remarkable. Now, as I noted in the Substack, I'm not particularly devastated or worried. In fact, I'm not really wanting people to think too much about my particular case. One, because I think it becomes a distraction from the wider issue, and two, others are being deplatformed as well across our universities. And that's what I talk about in the Substack, is basically our universities are failing at their core issue. But the background, very quickly, I'm not going to name names for a variety of reasons, because I think the actual particular organisers did a great job. I suspect, I don't know, but I suspect some higher up administrators decided there could be a health and safety issue. They certainly would have been ideologically opposed to anyone being able to come in and perhaps put a different perspective or a bit more nuance into the Palestine-Israel debate or discussion. Or there were threats. That's another possibility, that various activist groups in the universities, and there's lots of the pro-Hamas, pro-Islamic groups there on campus, which will protest anything to do with Israel, anything to do with the Jews. It's quite possible there were threats, protests, complaint. I just don't know at this time. All I can tell you is I got deplatformed. I was actually asked to go, so I wasn't asking to be, just changing the screen here, there we go. I wasn't asked to go, I did not ask to go onto the campus and to speak. I was actually invited, and I found this, for me, quite interesting. I was asked to talk into the Israel-Gaza question, not only as a former chair of foreign affairs, but of course, as you know, I recently travelled there to Israel and to the Gaza border. I didn't get into Gaza. But they were the ones who asked me to speak into this from a political, legal, ethical side of things. And partly it was me to talk. I would have shared, obviously, some photos and impressions, and then also to take an array of questions from academics and students. And I would have expected it would have been actually quite a fruitful discussion around the nature of the conflict, around international law, international responses, and so on. But that seemed too much. I don't think for the particular organisers. I think higher-ups or those around. And so that got cancelled. A very short little message. I've been struck by some of the comments online, because I posted this, of course, online. And some people say, well, no, you shouldn't have been allowed to speak it as a controversial topic. There's only one way of talking about it, which shows that not only naivety, but an arrogance of the highest order. And that's unfortunately reflective of what's happening in our universities here, because it's not just the deplatforming that I've now experienced. It's the deplatforming of many speakers. If you have a view on Israel-Palestine that's more nuanced, if you have an opinion on the likes of the Treaty of Waitangi, which is anything but obsequious or completely giving over to a novel new interpretation in recent years. If you have opinions on gender theory, certainly like abortion, euthanasia as well, there's no chance that you're going to have an opportunity to speak. And so what I write about in that Substack is, what is the point of universities? If they can't even discuss and debate topics like this, why do we pay ratepayer and taxpayer money for them? When you think about it, those professors and lecturers are paid enormous amounts of money to be in a fairly protected environment. And at one level, I don't mind that. So I've done a number of degrees at university. I think universities have a role to play. But you think, and it may be yourselves as well, all of those New Zealanders who work hard every day and pay enormous amounts of tax which goes to pay for these gilded professorialships, is that right and appropriate when those same professors and universities will not support or enable discussion and debate on tough topics? That's why universities exist, or one of the reasons university exists, is it's meant to be the place where tough discussions are had, where debates and arguments can play out. That's the reasonable expectation of a university. And if you're the guy who's working on the roads, if you're that farmer, I'm thinking particularly of those who do the hard manual labour, often not paid enough. If those people work hard, and they do, and those hours they put into that work to pay the taxes in this country to fund those universities, I don't think it's right or fair, to be honest, if those universities are not doing their job, which is enabling debate and discussion, and actually almost to the fringes. And what I mean by that is the universities should be allowed to actually debate even some of the stuff that we might find offensive and crazy. because that's what they're there for. As I noted in the Substack, it's actually been brave men and women debating, often pushing against the norm, pushing against the understanding of the day, which have brought about breakthroughs, be it in science or philosophy or whatever. That's what's needed. And so very, very disappointing that our universities, like those in other countries, are becoming quite, well, to use that term, well-worn term, quite woke. They have an absolute inability, not in all and every case, of course, but our universities have an inability now to discuss the tough issues, to allow a variety of perspectives. So in my case, they couldn't even cope with a former politician, a former chair of foreign affairs, coming in and sharing impressions from a trip to Israel. That was too much for them. They just couldn't cope. And so it had to be silenced. But as we know, they have Palestinian and Islamic radicals on their campuses. That is perfectly fine. Same with the likes of topics like, I don't know, the Treaty of Waitangi. You can have Maori radicals on, screaming that they own everything in this country and have sovereignty. Someone else who wants to come in, like Professor Paul Moon actually was meant to give granted a talk at the National Library with a more nuanced approach to what was happening around the treaty. He got cancelled by the National Library, you might remember. And he's an eminent professor, one of our most eminent professors. Think about what they called the Listener 7. These were academics from a variety of universities who, was it about 4 or 5 years ago, wrote an open letter saying, look, we're actually quite concerned about the paralleling of Mataranga Māori with science. And I think over 2,000 of their colleagues got whipped up to in a storm, demanding that they lose their jobs. And this is academics. Again, people who are allowed to have opinions, and as I say, allowed to have mad ideas, because that's the melting pot. That's where you would expect at universities. Ideas are discussed and debated. But as I've found out, as the Listener 7 have experienced, as Professor Paul Moon, as Don Brash, you remember famously back at Massey University days, Jonathan Alien of the Free Speech Union, opinions that are not woke, opinions that are not progressive, are being cancelled. And I return to where I started with the Substack's fundamental point is, why are we paying for this? Why do we, and it probably includes all of us here online and commenting, why do we work long hours to pay taxes to pay for professors, academics and universities to shut down debate? I think a legitimate question. I can see lots and lots of comments coming through here. Yes, as Harrison saying, welcome to the cancel culture. DD says, as with, I've lost my button, as the actress said to the bishop. There we go. I see what's happened. It's popped up. So many comments have flown through. I've lost the pages. They keep being pushed down. DD saying, don't talk about anything that's going to offend the snowflakes. Yeah, and look, at one level we can throw that barb about, but society is not going to progress. In fact, what we are seeing is regression in society. I've actually just done a radio interview with the Human Rights Commissioner, Stephen Rainbow. That'll be available soon. That's through RCR. And he was talking about social cohesion breaking down, and it is in New Zealand. And part of it is that cancel culture, that inability to be able to talk and discuss. And because of that, we are going to go backwards. Rosie points out, no, well, they would never decline someone like Jacinda or Helen Clark. It's a bit like I mentioned the other week. They're more than happy to write and take opinion pieces. This is the media now, from the left, but very rarely from the right. Again, I haven't had much published of late because they don't like the opinions, which, at one level, they're free to have. Murray says it's frustrating that minority have a say. Look, and I think that's something really important to stress. This is a minority within the campuses, but they hold enormous sway. And I ultimately conclude in the Substack, we shouldn't yet, stress that word, we shouldn't yet stop funding universities. But what we need to see is more courage from academics, from students, from administrators. It will come at a risk, but that's how great things have happened. So we need more of that. And as Simply Grease saying, you don't want it from our other side, you want balance. Well, that's the point. That's the point. And just as I'm comfortable with radicals speaking on campus on far left causes, I'm more than happy that they're allowed to. It's not my view, but you want to see variety, but it's just not there. And yeah, Darren saying they're meant to challenge. Well, you think they're meant to, but they don't. Sue asked an exceptionally good question. In many ways, I'm beginning to think it's not. Personally, this is a whole slightly different tangent. I'm conscious we've gone well over time. Personally, I think a lot of university degrees aren't worth the paper they're written on. I think we've fallen into a bit of a trap in this country that everything, every sort of role and job, every bit of study needs to now be a degree. Personally, I think there's a whole lot of things which are appropriately taught at a polytech. I think there are other things that actually don't need degrees as such. I'm a bit of a, I don't know, is it a snob? I probably am. But I have a sense that it's sort of the traditional topics and fields of study which can be at universities. And I don't think there's any problem of going and doing, I don't know, accounting, for example, at a polytech. I don't think everything has to be called a bachelor's degree or a master's degree. And personally, I don't see it as a hierarchy. I just think there are different courses, literally, different courses for different horses. But anyway, that's just my take. But yeah, the university's a bit of a problem. Guys, I am conscious I have gone well over time. And I agree with this from DD as well. We need courage not just from academics. In fact, not just politicians. We need courage right through society. And maybe I'll leave you with this challenge. It's needed from all of us to not play into this game. Because as you know, if you think about the supposedly controversial topics in our society, it's very easy for us to go quiet. But don't. I mean, I'm not saying that you go into your workplace today and pick a massive fight. But if someone insists that you must hold a singular view on the Israel-Gaza conflict, don't. Share your view if they're sharing theirs. Do it respectfully. It's the same to do with the Treaty of Waitangi or any of the political issues of today, RSE or whatever. Express your view. If you work in the public service, don't wear those stupid rainbow lanyards. Do not put pronouns in your email signatories. Stand up and say no. Again, do it with respect and generosity, but have the courage to stand up and go, no, I'm not playing this game. I'm not interested in this. Or also try and twist it if they insist, oh no, you need to put in or wear certain items like these lanyards. Say, well, I'd like a different one, please. I'd like it actually to have a Christian message on it, if you don't mind. Push back. And that's the courage that I think is needed, not just in the big areas of life, but if you will, in the small ones. Just don't play along. Don't play the game. Become a resistor, if you will. Anyway, guys, I better run. I am very conscious it's busy for everybody. As I say, I've got my Substack if you want to read more about my deplatforming. Jump on and see Bob's as well. He's busily writing. He does most days. He is prolific and wonderful. And last message, we have political playback tonight. That's 5 o'clock live. Bob and I will be talking very much New Zealand politics, which is why I haven't got into too much New Zealand politics today. So I've just seen DD is telling me that it's school holidays ago for the full hour. No, I don't think my voice will cope, but that's very kind. I think it's kind, or maybe this could be torture to some, I don't know. But look, join Bob and I for political playback tonight. As I say, jump on to the Family First YouTube channel, as some as you are, our webpage, to see the podcast. Go across to Reality Check Radio. I've got my different interviews there. I've just finished talking to the crew at Doc Edge. They're a documentary film team, amazing. And as I say, I've just done a recording with Stephen Rainbow, the Human Rights Commissioner here, which was really cool. So we'll have that up in a day or two. In the meantime, you have a wonderful day, everyone, and I look forward to talking to you again next Tuesday. But for those who are able, I'll see you at 5 o'clock tonight.